not having you say no. Well,
Hello, this is Lily Kostriva. I'm here for New Examiner. We are going to interview a very interesting person, John Link. John Link used to be our contributor writer. He has been with our magazine for many years, and now he's a retired professor from Western Michigan University. And I have a few questions for him, just like many writers in our magazine, we are curious about his retirement life. So first, I heard you were philosophy students in your life before you became an artist. We just wonder, how did you from a philosopher became an artist, and how you from artist became a professor, and how is all these years of teaching influence your life? You can just say as many you want, be free, and don't feel like you have to hide anything from us. We are all really open-minded people. So your time now, John.
okay. When I was in philosophy, all the philosophy students agreed we were in philosophy because we couldn't do anything else. And the problem with philosophy, as I was just talking to Joe about, and Rachel, was that it requires you to stay still to read, and that bothered me a lot. And what I also found art to be the antithesis of philosophy. Again, we had a great conversation about all the great aestheticians. I was told I should study because I did paintings a lot. And I told the department head that really those people were talking about something other than making art. I didn't know exactly what, but art has a kinesthetic element, it has a work your way through the suit thing, and there's any big theory that you follow, and all that stuff. So when I flunked the draft physical, I didn't have to stay in philosophy to keep my deferment, and I just started taking art classes.
Okay.
And loved it. Now, how do you get to be a professor? It's total luck. At least at the time I became a professor, it was the luck of the baby boomers. All the universities were expanding, and I actually came close to getting a job with only 12 or 15 credits in art, teaching at the University of Arkansas. They just couldn't quite hack the fact all I had was a bachelor's at the time. But when I got the right degree and got a couple offers, and I took the one in Southern Illinois, which is where I met Joe.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we talked, because you actually primed my brain with something to say. English was my worst subject in high school and grade school. So when I went to college, I was supposed to be an engineer. And I also took up with English because I thought college was a place where you worked on your weaknesses. Already knew math and science. So I actually have a double major in English as an undergrad. And that's how I got going, reading great writers.
How did you connect with the New Examiner? How did you start writing for New Examiner?
Derek Guthrie came to Southern Illinois, Carbondale, during the early years of the Examiner, just to see what was going on in academia. You know, one of the Examiner's things is about the transmission of culture, and that's one of the places it takes place. And I met him in the screened-in porch of Jim Sullivan. Do you remember Jim Sullivan?
Yeah.
Who, was really his contact to come to Southern Illinois. And I just liked the guy. He was tuned into things at a more honest level than most of the people I had met, especially in the writing world. And we got along ever since.
What kind of topics usually you like to write about?
Well, I used to like diatribes, where I just scream bloody murder, but I've decided not to write any more diatribes. They never go anywhere. They're about dead ends, and everybody knows there are a lot of dead ends, so what's the use? So that last thing I wrote is kind of what I like, that one about Darby Banner, which was positive. I point at something, someone might get something. And I also like writing more like general takes. And those border on diatribes at times, but they're also, there's one I wrote, actually it was for art, so it's called The Hardness of Art. Positive in a negative way about how art is hard on artists. That it isn't the glorious life that some people think it is. But that's sort of it's a narrow field.
Is there any art critique you feel like you really respectful and you feel like you like to people to read more about their writing?
Alive?
Could be alive, could be the past. That's fine.
Greenberg, who's
Okay.
not alive.
Can you tell me more about?
Well, you have to read him. One of the biggest problems with Greenberg is everybody thinks they know he told artists what to paint. He was the king of New York, this, that, and the other. And if you go read his writing, you'll see a whole different person.
Mm-hmm.
You were asking me too, like, he was about the last of the critics that took a chance on unknown artists. He went to studios rather than galleries. The critics that are working now tend to just go to whatever galleries or museums are showing, and they stick with the known. Pollock, everybody associates Greenberg with Pollock. Pollock was a complete unknown when Greenberg started touting his work in Partisan Review. Partisan Review was kind of not that fancy of a magazine. So that the thing that's missing from current work, writing work, is no one's out there looking except for stuff that is provided to them by someone else. And that doesn't mean there aren't good artists being provided, but it's more exciting when you're writing about someone that's not that well known.
That's very interesting. We have a mission try to rejuvenate the art writing in this century because we'll find out like not many people actually going to art writing anymore. So do you have any advice?
On what? How to write?
How to actually looking something to write about art?
Go to the studios. Go to studios that are outside the trend.
That's very interesting. Then tell me about how do you personally see about trend trendy these days?
About what?
About trend, you were just mentioning about the outside the trend.
Yeah.
And how did you personally see our trend in our generation these days?
Do I see trend?
Hmm.
Yeah. Academia is infected with it.
Tell me more about that.
Well, it's kind of a prestige thing. Universities, when art first started being taught at universities, it was a difficult marriage because there's a peer review system, publications. The publications the scientist does are objectively verified and even repeated by peers, reviewed by peers on objective basis. Art is subjective opinion. I would maintain it's about real stuff, but you don't get at art by measuring it or any other way other than directly experiencing it. And everybody's experience is a little different. So how do you work this into a university system that insists that the faculty be measured by people who know nothing about art? I mean, the administrators don't know about art. So they want someone to do it. And the natural, I mean, if you're off the beaten path, you're not going to get that kind of quote unquote peer review. So the evolution, if you go back to the 60s when art started getting big in universities, there were a lot of wild and crazy people in the departments. But as it evolved to satisfy the needs for promotion and tenure and raises and getting fired and all that, the tendency was to get hooked up with the trend. And not everybody does it, but a lot of people get into a trend that's popular, you're more likely to get shows, stuff like that. That's probably not the best way to do it. If what you want is good, if you want success, is the best way.
That's a very good point about my next question. A lot of students are going to art because they love art so much, but after 4 years of college, they get out of school, they get really confused about art. How did you give them advice about that?
Well, it's a confusing system. It doesn't, I mean, some of the stuff that goes on is pretty strange. There's a guy at University of Chicago by the name of Pope L, who made his name by putting sausage, he was given something, he dressed up in a sausage kind of over his important parts, and then handed out dollar bills in front of a bank. Stuff like that. As a matter of fact, he was one of those involved in the NEA controversy. If that's what your professor is saying you should be doing, and then you go into a museum and we'll say, look at a Titian or Rembrandt or Renoir, something like that, I would be confused. It goes beyond wild and crazy. It's sort of predictable.
So what kind of advice you can give those artists come out of art school?
Well, be honest. Let your eyes tell you what they're going to tell you. That's what counts. Don't listen to your profs. No, I think listening to your profs is part of it. But they're not going to find every prof makes sense to them. They're going to probably find one or two and soak up everything you can from that person. See where you go, see what happens.
I ask you a very personal question. Are you gonna get mad about me? You have any regret for being an artist?
No. No. I mean, I was very lucky, like I said. I got a teaching job. Joe was lucky because he went to Tamron. And that actually, that was a kind of a ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to you.
Yeah.
You explained to me what Tamron was.
Yeah. Well, at one time I wanted to really switch from painting to printmaking
Mm-hmm.
because there was something you could teach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a right way and a wrong way if you want the print to come out. Although I was talking to Joe and Rachel earlier about a student we had here who developed a suck print with a vacuum-driven silk screen. It was very interesting and very chancy. I mean, a lot of them turned out bad. It relied on happenstance as well as skill. I think it was more like recognizing when it was coming out good. But lithography is maybe the most chemically demanding of all the printmaking forms. And you're depending on processes that you can't see. And I remember one student at Carbondale who got the directions mixed up and didn't gum before he put the asphaltum on. And he brought me this plate, said, something's wrong here, I can't get it to print, it would just print black. And it was like, you know, I can't remember his name, but I said, so-and-so, you forgot the gum mask. Stuff like that. I mean, a painter could do that.
That's very interesting. Can you
and maybe
remember?
it would work.
So did you remember any students just so memorable for you, go through all these years of teaching? Is there any student will come out of your mind just say, oh, that is kind of
Well, here's
interesting?
one right here. He sent me this email, like, this is Joe Segura. I don't know if you remember me or not.
Do you
I
mind?
was just,
I have a video of your face.
No.
No, can I just turn my camera?
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
This is-
oh, okay. And then do you want to tell me a few words about? Are you the students of John Link?
Yeah, I was at Southern Illinois University at Carbondale in the mid-'70s. John was there. He was a painting instructor, and he also taught plate lithography. And when I graduated, I went to talk to him about what I should do now, like most students. I was confused about where I should go and what I should do. He said, well, think about the Tamron Institute. And I said, what is the Tamron Institute? So he explained to me that it was this institution that taught collaborative printmaking, and it was very famous, and that he felt like since I was interested in printmaking and I was doing well in printmaking, that I should think about trying. And I actually at the time was a Ford Foundation Fellow, and he explained to me that the Tamron Institute had been funded and started by a Ford Foundation Fellowship, and he thought that would be a good connection too, which probably was true. So I went there, and that was the beginning of my career, my life as a printmaker and a collaborative printmaker and teacher. And I spent many years at Arizona State University, and I had my own studio, and then I moved to the University of Notre Dame at South Bend, and was there for about 10 years, and I just retired this last year.
Wonderful. So how do you think about John as a teacher?
What
What-
was John?
what-
Not fair.
How do you think about John as a teacher?
Oh, he wasn't a very good teacher.
Okay.
No, he was a great teacher. I mean, I just explained to you that he led me to what was my career choice and a very successful career in the art world. I mean, I wouldn't have done that without him. I don't know if anybody else would have advised me that way.
Wonderful. So now we go back to John. John, would you mind tell our readers, since we have so many readers online these days, we want to get some advice just like you advise to your students. Can you give us some advice?
Advice for reading?
For reading, writing, and for
Don't
art?
believe everything you read. Just think for yourself when you're reading this stuff, including my stuff. That's one of the great things about the Examiner, is it supports a lot of points of view. There are most of the art mags have their own take on things. And if you're not part of that take, you don't write for them. And we were both talking about how we used to take art mags and found we didn't read them. I used to keep mine in a stack to read later until I realized later I wasn't reading them either and quit taking them. And one of the reasons for that is they're so homogeneous within their own scope, art form, new criteria. You kind of know what I guess people do read them because they sell them, but I'm not sure I know who or why. At Western, we had a candidate for a painting position once who part of her spiel was she was going to make every student in the class subscribe to Artforum. And that was going to be the basis of her course. And that was immediately, instantaneously, the moment when I decided she didn't get my vote. She didn't make it either. And a few other people who thought that was going too far, although they all love to be in art form. That's part of the system now.
So anything else you want to talk to our reader? Anything?
Don't think of the life of an artist as easy. It's really hard. And the odds are against you. That doesn't mean you don't make the bet, but they're against you.
Thank you so much. That's a
Okay.
wonderful conversation.